God has seen everything they did to you, now the exposure. Listen carefully. This is not a coincidence. This is not just another message crossing your path. I am Archangel Michael, and I speak now with urgency because heaven is no longer silent about what you endured. God has seen everything. Every moment you were misunderstood. Every time your kindness was taken as weakness. Every secret conversation held behind your back. Every plan that was quietly sabotaged while you were still trying to be fair. Nothing escaped his sight. You questioned yourself when things started falling apart for no clear reason. You replayed conversations late at night, wondering if you said too much or not enough. You felt resistance rising from places that once felt safe. You were not imagining it. What was done to you was real. What was hidden from you was intentional. And what was allowed for a season is now reaching its end. God does not expose immediately. He exposes precisely. He waited while they grew confident in secrecy. He waited while they assumed silence meant ignorance. He waited while they mistook your restraint for unawareness. But understand this, waiting does not mean forgetting. He recorded every motive. He weighed every action. He listened to every word spoken when they thought no one was watching. And now the shift has begun. You may already feel it. A strange stillness before movement. A quiet tension in the air. A sense that something long hidden is about to surface. That is not fear. That is anticipation. Because exposure does not begin with chaos. It begins with clarity. Soon, what confused you will start to make sense. Why certain doors closed suddenly. Why support felt inconsistent. Why progress stalled at critical moments. It was never because you were unworthy. It was because opposition was closer than you realized. Some of the deepest wounds come not from enemies, but from proximity. From those who smiled while undermining. From those who benefited while betraying. From those who watched you struggle and called it loyalty. God saw the imbalance. God saw the injustice. God saw how you kept your heart clean while others played games with intent. And now, hear this clearly, He is stepping in. The exposure that is beginning will not require you to defend yourself. You will not need to explain your side. You will not need to confront or accuse. Truth carries its own authority. What is about to be revealed will come through patterns repeating too obviously to ignore. Through words spoken carelessly. Through reactions that betray hidden motives. Through circumstances aligning in ways that remove every mask. You may feel conflicted when this happens. Part of you will feel relief. Part of you will feel grief, not for who they were, but for who you believed they were. Allow that feeling. You were sincere. You were loyal. You were patient far longer than most would have been. That was not weakness. That was character. But character does not mean tolerance without boundaries. This is why God has been strengthening you quietly. Why He has been teaching you discernment instead of reaction. Why He has been calling you inward rather than outward. Because once the exposure is complete, you will not go back to who you were. You will see more clearly. Trust more wisely. Move more deliberately. And those who relied on your silence will be unsettled by your calm clarity. Do not rush ahead of this moment. Do not announce what you feel. Do not give hints that you see what is unfolding. Silence right now is protection. If this message is stirring something deep within you, receive it. Stay grounded. Remain observant. And if staying connected to this stream of guidance feels aligned, even a gentle act of support helps ensure these messages continue reaching those who are ready, without breaking the sacred flow. Because what God is about to reveal next will not only expose what they did, it will uncover why it was allowed, and who you are becoming because of it. And that revelation is closer than you think. Stay with me now, because this is where heaven begins to separate what you felt from what was actually happening. Up until now, you carried questions without answers. But God never allows confusion to last longer than purpose requires. I am Archangel Michael, and I tell you this plainly: God saw what they did while it was happening, not after. You wondered how certain things collapsed so suddenly. Why support vanished at critical moments. Why information you shared in trust seemed to work against you. It wasn't random. It wasn't timing. And it certainly wasn't because you lacked favor. There were hands involved that smiled in your face and reached behind your back. There were words twisted after you spoke them in good faith. There were moments when what you built was quietly weakened, not openly attacked. God allowed it for a reason. Not because He approved, but because He was revealing. See, exposure cannot happen without contrast. Truth cannot shine unless darkness is allowed to show itself fully. And God wanted you to see clearly, not partially. That is why He didn't remove them immediately. If they had been removed too soon, you would have defended them. You would have doubted yourself. You would have wondered if you were too sensitive. So God waited until the pattern repeated. Until the behavior was undeniable. Until the motive revealed itself through consistency. And while you were learning restraint, they were growing careless. They assumed you would always forgive. They assumed you would always explain yourself. They assumed your silence meant ignorance. They were wrong. God was watching how far they would go when they thought they were safe. And now, listen carefully, the very things they used to undermine you will become the evidence that exposes them. What they meant to hide will surface naturally. What they tried to control will slip from their grasp. What they thought they could manage quietly will unfold publicly, without you saying a word. This is why God has been telling you to stay still. You may have felt an unusual pull toward quietness. A desire to stop explaining. A fatigue around conversations that go nowhere. That was not withdrawal. That was instruction. Because when exposure begins, movement must come from heaven, not from emotion. You don't need to warn anyone. You don't need to reveal what you suspect. You don't need to confront. Truth does not need your assistance. Soon, someone will say something that contradicts what you were told. Soon, a reaction will be stronger than the situation requires. Soon, loyalty will crack under pressure. And in that moment, clarity will settle into your spirit, not loudly, but firmly. You will know. Not guess. Not assume. Know. And when you know, you will feel a strange mix of emotions. Relief, because you are no longer confused. Sadness, because you wished it weren't so. Strength, because you are no longer dependent on what once held influence over you. This is the moment God has been preparing you for. Because exposure does not just remove people. It removes illusions. You will begin to see how much energy you spent trying to preserve peace at your own expense. How often you gave the benefit of the doubt when your spirit was already warning you. How much weight you carried that was never meant to be yours. God is lifting that weight now. But understand this, not everyone exposed will apologize. Some will deny. Some will deflect. Some will attempt to rewrite history. Do not engage. You are not responsible for their response. You are responsible for your alignment. Silence here is not weakness, it is mastery. Because once exposure begins, the power shifts automatically. They lose influence. They lose access. They lose control over the narrative. And you gain clarity. This is also why God has been protecting your reputation without you realizing it. While they spoke quietly, God positioned witnesses. While they distorted, God preserved truth. While they assumed damage was permanent, God limited the reach. You may soon notice that others begin to see what you never spoke about. Questions will arise that you didn't initiate. Distance will form without you asking for it. That is divine intervention. And here is something important: you are not being exposed with them. You are being separated from them. God never exposes His chosen to shame them. He exposes around them to free them. So when the moment arrives, and it is arriving faster than you think, do not rush to fill the silence. Let God speak. Let circumstances align. Let truth rise on its own. If this message is settling deeply in you, allow it to anchor you. Remain observant. Remain grounded. And if staying connected to this guidance feels right, even a quiet act of support helps keep this stream flowing, without breaking the sacred tone. Because what God reveals next will not just expose what they did. It will reveal who stood by you when it mattered. And who was never meant to go where God is taking you. And that revelation will change how you move forward forever. Now listen with your spirit, not just your ears, because this is where the message turns inward, and where God begins revealing what this exposure is producing inside you. I am Archangel Michael, and I tell you this with certainty. God did not allow this season to harden you. He allowed it to refine you. You may not realize it yet, but the person you are becoming now is far more grounded, discerning, and spiritually anchored than the one who first entered this situation. Before, you trusted easily. You gave freely. You assumed others carried the same heart you did. That was not wrong. But it was incomplete. God never intended you to lose your softness, only your blindness. The exposure that is unfolding is not just about them. It is about you stepping into wisdom without losing compassion. You learned something powerful through this betrayal. You learned how to listen to what isn't said. How to read energy, not just words. How to notice when support feels heavy instead of strengthening. Those lessons were costly, but they were necessary. Because where God is taking you next, discernment is not optional. It is required. There are rooms you are about to enter where intentions matter more than appearances. There are opportunities approaching that will attract attention. Both sincere and deceptive. And God needed you sharpened before elevation. This is why the exposure did not happen at the first offense. You would have reacted emotionally. You would have confronted prematurely. You would have focused on being right instead of being ready. But now, you are steady. Now, when truth surfaces, it will not knock you off balance. It will confirm what your spirit already knew. And here is something you must understand clearly. The betrayal was never about you lacking value. It was about others feeling threatened by it. Your presence carries weight. Your integrity exposes insecurity. Your growth unsettles those who benefit from stagnation. Some people cannot celebrate what they cannot control. They stayed close not to protect you, but to monitor you. Not to support you, but to limit how far you could go. Not to walk with you, but to stay ahead of you. Yet while they watched you, God was working on you. You learned restraint. You learned silence. You learned that not every truth needs to be spoken to be validated. Those are marks of spiritual authority. Soon, as exposure continues, you will notice a shift in how you respond to situations. You will no longer feel the need to defend yourself. You will no longer over-explain your decisions. You will no longer seek closure from people who chose deception. That is not detachment, it is freedom. And freedom always comes before expansion. There will be a brief moment where you feel tempted to revisit the past. To replay conversations. To wonder how long it was happening. Release that urge. God does not reveal truth so you can relive pain. He reveals it so you can release weight. What matters now is not when it started, but when it ends. And it is ending now. You may feel a strange calm settling over you lately. A clarity that doesn't need reassurance. A confidence that isn't loud but unshakable. That is alignment returning. This is also why God is asking you to guard your tongue in this season. Do not vent to those who don't need to know. Do not narrate your healing. Do not give updates on your awareness. Silence here is not secrecy, it is stewardship. Because the more quietly you move, the more clearly God moves ahead of you. There are connections being rearranged right now. Conversations you won't be invited into anymore. Spaces where your absence will be noticed, but not addressed. That is separation at work. And separation is always a sign that promotion is near. Some people cannot go where you are going, not because they are evil, but because they are misaligned. Exposure is simply the mechanism God uses to realign your path. Soon, you will look back and realize the betrayal interrupted something that was already ending. That God allowed it to surface when it did to prevent something worse later. That what felt like loss was actually preservation. And this realization will bring peace, not bitterness. You will stop asking, "Why did they do this?" and start seeing, "Why God saved me." As this truth settles, let it ground you. Let it strengthen you. Let it steady your steps. And if remaining connected to this message feels aligned, a gentle sign of support helps keep this flow of guidance moving, quietly, without disrupting what God is doing. Because what God is about to reveal next will not be about betrayal at all. It will be about the door that opens the moment this chapter fully closes. And you are closer to that moment than you realize. Remain still with me now, because this is where heaven begins to shift your position, not just your understanding. I am Archangel Michael, and I tell you this with authority: exposure is not the end of the story. It is the threshold. Up until now, you have been processing what happened. But God is already moving you toward what happens next. You may feel it already. A quiet detachment from what once consumed your thoughts. A growing disinterest in revisiting old wounds. A sense that something ahead is pulling your attention forward. That is not avoidance. That is transition. When God exposes what was hidden, He does so to clear space. And cleared space never stays empty for long. You are entering a season where your decisions will become simpler, not because life is easier, but because clarity has replaced confusion. You will stop negotiating with doubt. Stop explaining your boundaries. Stop questioning instincts that have already proven true. This is the moment where your inner authority begins to match your calling. There will be subtle tests in this phase. Opportunities to re-engage with what God has already removed. Invitations that appeal to nostalgia instead of alignment. Moments where you are tempted to reopen doors out of habit, not wisdom. Pay attention. God is watching not just what you leave behind, but what you refuse to go back to. Because returning to exposed spaces delays promotion. You may notice that some people grow uncomfortable with your new calm. Your silence will feel louder to them than your explanations ever did. Your boundaries will feel like rejection, even though you never announced them. Do not shrink to soothe their discomfort. You are not responsible for managing reactions to your healing. This is where many people hesitate, but you must not. The exposure you witnessed was God answering prayers you may not even remember praying. Prayers for peace, for clarity, for alignment. He answered them by revealing what could no longer stay hidden. And now He is asking you to walk differently. Walk without looking over your shoulder. Walk without carrying the need to be understood. Walk without the burden of proving you were right. Because the truth no longer needs your defense. You may also notice that your sensitivity has changed. You will feel energy more clearly. Discern intentions faster. Recognize misalignment sooner, without drama, without fear. This is not hypervigilance. This is discernment restored. God is sharpening your awareness because the path ahead requires precision. There are conversations coming that will require wisdom. Decisions approaching that will shape your next season. Opportunities forming that will test whether you trust clarity or comfort. And here is what you must remember. Comfort kept you quiet, but clarity will move you forward. The season you are entering will reward courage over consensus. You may stand alone at times, not because you are abandoned, but because you are being repositioned. God often isolates before He elevates. Not to punish, but to prepare. In isolation, your voice becomes clearer. Your direction becomes sharper. Your dependence shifts from people to purpose. This is where you learn to move without needing applause. And once you master that, influence follows naturally. Soon, you will notice doors opening without force. Connections forming without manipulation. Support appearing without strings attached. This is how you will know you are no longer fighting resistance, you are flowing with alignment. What once required effort will feel natural. What once felt blocked will feel accessible. What once drained you will no longer have access. That is the fruit of exposure handled correctly. But let me warn you gently, do not rush this phase. Do not sprint into the future trying to forget the past. Let the lesson finish settling. Wisdom matures in stillness. God is teaching you how to move with discernment, not reaction. With confidence, not defense. With authority, not explanation. And that authority will be needed very soon. Because the next phase of your journey will place you in positions where others look to you for clarity. Where your presence stabilizes environments. Where your decisions affect more than just yourself. You could not carry that weight while surrounded by hidden opposition. That is why exposure had to come first. As this message lands, allow yourself to breathe deeper. You are not behind. You are not broken. You are not disqualified. You are positioned. And if remaining connected to this guidance feels aligned, even a quiet sign of support helps keep this stream flowing, without interrupting what God is doing beneath the surface. Because the final movement God is preparing is not about what was revealed. It is about the choice you are about to make. A choice that will confirm this transition and permanently shift your path forward. Stay with me now, because this is the moment where heaven asks you to confirm what God has already begun. I am Archangel Michael, and I speak this with final authority. The exposure you witnessed was not the conclusion. It was the invitation. God has shown you what was hidden so you could choose alignment without hesitation. Soon, you will face a decision that feels quiet but carries eternal weight. It will not come wrapped in urgency. It will not demand explanation. It will simply ask, will you move forward differently now that you see clearly? This choice is not about cutting people off in anger. It is not about proving a point. It is not about revisiting the past. It is about access. Who has the right to your energy? Who hears your plans? Who stands beside you as you step into what God is opening next? And once you decide, truly decide, something powerful will happen. The emotional pull will loosen. The inner conflict will settle. The noise will quiet. Because clarity removes struggle. You were never meant to wrestle with truth once it was revealed. You were meant to respond. And your response will be calm. You will stop overthinking interactions. Stop explaining boundaries. Stop justifying your growth. That is how you will know healing has matured. There may be a moment when the one who wronged you senses the shift. They may attempt to reappear, to soften their tone, to reopen a door through familiarity or nostalgia. Do not be deceived. What God exposed cannot be undone by comfort. You are not required to revisit what He already closed. This is where many people falter, but you must not. Choosing peace over access is not cruelty. It is wisdom. And wisdom protects destiny. The season ahead will require focus. Your energy will be valuable. Your discernment will matter. God is preparing to place you in environments where clarity is currency. Where integrity speaks louder than explanation. Where your presence carries authority simply because it is aligned. You could not enter those spaces while carrying unresolved entanglements. That is why exposure came first. You may notice, after this decision, that life begins to flow more easily. Not without challenge, but without confusion. Doors will open without resistance. Conversations will feel mutual instead of draining. Support will come without conditions. This is not coincidence. This is alignment responding to obedience. And understand this deeply, the betrayal did not delay you. It qualified you. It taught you discernment. It refined your boundaries. It strengthened your reliance on God instead of people. Without it, you may have mistaken familiarity for destiny again. But now, you see. And seeing changes everything. You are stepping into a chapter where peace will be your confirmation. Where clarity will guide your steps. Where silence will speak louder than defense ever could. You will no longer chase understanding. You will attract alignment. And when you look back, not with pain, but with perspective, you will recognize the mercy in the exposure. God revealed the truth before deeper damage was done. Before greater loss occurred. Before access became entitlement. That is protection. That is love. That is divine timing. Remain steady now. Remain discerning. Remain aligned. And if this message has resonated deeply, staying connected through a gentle sign of support helps ensure these words continue reaching those who are awakening in this same season, without disrupting the sacred flow. Because what happens next is not about who hurt you. It is about who you are becoming now that the truth has set you free. And that transformation, once it fully unfolds, will mark the beginning of a chapter where nothing hidden can follow you. And nothing meant for you will miss you.